Friday, but then Fridays now we do trivia, so we have to have fire away on Thursday, and that just doesn't sound the same, so we didn't know what to call it, so we just say, hey, here's Kirby.
Very good.
How you doing, brother?
Tim and Ray, great. Thank you for letting me be a part of this today.
Brother Ray's going to be coming your way not too long from now.
Looking forward to it.
Well,
I've seen that he's been in Dallas a few times. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, Kirby, what do you think about I just got to ask you, what do you think about Dennis Rodman going to North Korea? I know it's a joke, but I mean, he went there. He went there, and now they're threatening nuclear strikes on the U.S.
Did you steal something from him?
How do you figure this, Kirby?
Well, you know, in the old days when we had a politician or even a former president go, we had to take it seriously. At least with Dennis Rodman, we knew that we could laugh about it a little bit. I just think everybody in the administrations has said, what is going on, as we are, and I will agree with you. I think it would make a good Saturday Night Live skit, and they probably will have one on that. I mean, you just couldn't make it up any more than that. But obviously, there have been some positives over the years when you've had a serious broker sometimes go behind the official channels to see if they could bring something about. But I don't think this is one of those, and so I don't think anything's going to come of it. But it is pretty much of a sideshow right now, and it illustrates again why we should pay attention to North Korea. There's some pretty crazy people up there, and Dennis Rodman fit in very well.
North Korea vows preemptive nuke strike on USA, says the Drudge Report. That's their headline right now. And Kirby, I don't want to spend the whole show on this, obviously, but what does this guy want? This leader of what's his name?
This is the young guy, right?
Yeah, what's his name?
Right, it is. Yeah, and I think there is a delusional assumption that because they have nuclear arms that they will be safe from America and they can rattle the saber in a way that, let's mention another person that just passed on, Hugo Chavez could not, or even Mahmoud Ahmadinejad cannot. And I think it illustrates again the incredible power and negotiating power, if you will, of nuclear weapons. These are people that probably would not be able to hold on to their power if it weren't for the totalitarian structure that they've established, but also would not probably be allowed to exist in the world community if it weren't for the fact that they had nuclear weapons. Other countries, I think, are watching, sadly, what has happened there and recognize that he wants more respect, he wants more concessions, he wants ways to increase the economic output of his country, recognizing at the same time, though, that these sanctions have hurt him tremendously. And so you're going to continue to see this saber rattling, couldn't get that out, simply because he has something that a lot of other countries don't have but would like to have, because it then puts them in a different position in terms of negotiating with the Western world.
Kirby, are they crazy enough over there to carry out that threat? Is this just saber rattling, or is it possible he would push the button to launch a nuclear missile? Or I guess, is there any way even how do you assess a threat like that?
Right now, what I think, and I just had Frank Gaffney in my radio program yesterday in studio, they are suggesting, that is, people that have worked in the Defense Department, he was Under Secretary of Defense under Ronald Reagan, that the threat that comes from either North Korea or a future nuclear Iran would not be one where they would fire at nuclear weapon at the American continent and do that in a way to actually kill people, as much as that they might be more inclined to fire it in the upper atmosphere and thus create an EMP, that's an electromagnetic pulse. Well, that pulse would then completely eliminate, just completely fry a lot of our electronics, and that perhaps could be a way to throw America or Western Europe, wherever they were to launch one of these, back to the 18th century or maybe 19th century. And so I think the goal there would not be to fire one nuclear weapon, because they would be concluding that, well, there are over 1,000 nuclear weapons that would be aimed at them by Western Europe, by even Russia, by the United States, but that if they could dramatically destabilize America, where all of a sudden the electronics that you guys are surrounded by right now, the cell phones that are in the pockets of all of our listeners, the computers that all of our listeners use would no longer be effective and the power grid would go down. That, I think, would be the real plan that at least some of these unstable dictators would really like to pursue.
Talk about Hugo Chavez for a minute. Most of our listeners have heard his name. Of course, he died yesterday or the day before. He was 2 days ago, I think. He was what do you call a man, an elected dictator? Is that
so, yeah.
He was
Venezuela. Elected, but, it reminds me of another Saturday Night Live skit. This just in, General Francisco Franco is still dead. Hugo Chavez is still dead. Well,
yes.
Because he is dead, that means some very interesting things, because he has ultimately taken a country that was a constitutional democracy and actually benefiting very well, at least in terms of its GDP, because of the tremendous amount of oil reserves, into a country now that is having trouble even keeping sometimes the lights on, and has supposedly collected all of this money, but now we find out that $2 billion apparently is held in some accounts controlled, at least originally, by Hugo Chavez or by his friends or neighbors or family members. Now, they went from time to time from one company to another company and nationalized those, just simply said, we're going to take over this. So, of course, he took control over of their parliament. He took control over the media. He took control over oil production and all of the rest. And so because of that, he was, in a sense, able to have complete control over the country. But then here's one other thing that he did. He began to sell the oil that they had to Cuba on basically pennies on the dollar. Cuba was then able to sell that oil on the open market at the market price. And so in a sense, Venezuela was propping up Cuba the way Russia used to prop up Cuba. What happens now is going to be very much of a question, because at least the constitutional right of succession means that the head of the Congress, or what is called the Parliament, but what we'd call our Congress, is to take control, the president of the Parliament. But instead, they're trying to put in another friend of Hugo Chavez in that position, who's also a friend of the Castro brothers, Fidel Castro and Raul Castro. And what happens there is going to be very important, and this is why I would encourage our listeners to pray for our new Secretary of State, John Kerry, because you would hope, but I can't predict, but you would hope that the administration, President Obama and John Kerry, would require that the constitutionally directed individual, that is the President of the Senate, would now be the President of the country. But if instead they allow for this shady deal, then we're going to continue to have problems with Venezuela and Cuba. And, of course, we can add to that list a lot of the other Latin American countries like Nicaragua, Peru, Colombia, and others. And that's all the more reason to pay attention to this, because we're talking about things that happen in our hemisphere.
We're talking with Kerby Anderson. He's the president of Probe Ministries, based out of Dallas, Texas. You can find them on the internet at probe.org. Kerby, tell us just a bit about Probe Ministries. I know we have you on every month, but we want to make sure folks know about your ministry. And tell us, when they come to probe.org, what they can find.
Well, lots of great resources. A lot of things we'll be talking about today in terms of spending, sequestration, but also other articles on cults and philosophy and world religions and politics and economics and science and creation evolution. And you name the topic, we certainly address that. And for people that are listening to the Probe radio program that you're so gracious to play, all the various radio programs that we air also have transcripts on the website, so you can print those out. There's podcasts of those materials, some videos, and all sorts of other resources. So I would certainly say that if you are finding yourself looking for good information from a Christian point of view, probe.org would be a good place to go. If you have young people that have to do a term paper or a speech or a debate or something like that, I think, again, they'd want to go there and find some of that material so that they will be more articulate and able to present a Christian perspective.
Kirby, you want to talk about Rand Paul in just a moment, the senator from Kentucky who's having a filibuster. Is he still filibustering?
I think you wrapped up
13 hours. Yeah,
13 hours.
Yeah.
I want to talk about why he did that in just a moment. I think it's very important. But first of all, what happened in Arkansas? Can you tell us what happened in Arkansas regarding the pro-life issue?
No, I'm afraid
I don't know.
You got me on that one.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you. I'll just read here. This is in the news today. Arkansas, according to the Associated Press, Arkansas now has the nation's most restrictive abortion law, a near ban on the procedure from the 12th week of pregnancy, unless a lawsuit or court action intervenes before it takes effect this summer. Lawmakers in the Republican-dominated legislature in Little Rock defied Governor Mike Beebe, overriding the Democrats' veto. So they passed the most restrictive and most pro-life bill in the nation, in the state of Arkansas. And so I'm assuming from reading this AP article that past the 12th week of pregnancy, you will not be able to get an abortion in the state of Arkansas. I don't know how many abortion clinics they have even. I can't imagine them having more than 3 or 4, 5 maybe. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I was referring to. So the pro-life cause continues, Kirby. I know that there's only so much that we can do legislatively because of Roe versus Wade. You can't ban abortion altogether. That would be struck down. But a lot of states are putting in strict regulations, parental consent, 24-hour waiting periods, making the young ladies look at ultrasounds so they'll know exactly what they're doing. I mean, all those things help. Any one of those things can lead a woman or a young woman to decide, hey, what I'm about to do, I really don't want to do.
Sure. Well, and let me give you some numbers because we, again, I think on American Family Radio every once in a while just need to counter-program to the secular media because if you were to watch the secular media on the 40th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, of abortion back in January, you'd think we're losing. And if anything, we are winning. According to Americans United for Life, there were 92 pro-life laws enacted in 2011 and an additional 43 pro-life provisions enacted in 2012, and these were happening in some of those states. As a matter of fact, the states that have been most successful in passing these legislation have been Louisiana, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and the one you just mentioned, Arkansas. They have been most effective, but you can go around the country and recognize that most of the listeners to this program today live in states where there have been very significant victories in the state legislature. Now, that doesn't mean that we've eliminated all abortions, and I certainly pray for the day in which we can. But given the limitations that were established 40 years ago by the Supreme Court, they have been able to, for example, ban third trimester abortions, require sonograms, require clinic safety standards. And when we implemented those, for example, in the state of Texas, we closed down a number of them because the abortion clinics were not even up to code for other kinds of clinics. Waiting periods, parental consent, parental notification. We are really winning the war of ideas. You wouldn't know that by listening to the mainstream media, but you just heard it right now here on American Family Radio.
That's a very good point. And again, we'll find out more about this. I'm sure folks in Arkansas know more than I do on this, what happened there. But congratulations, because that's really a great thing to do there in Arkansas, is protecting human life. A ban on abortions past the 12th week of pregnancy. So anyway,
it's going to go right into the court system. There's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And it points at two things. Something Kirby is saying, that as we move down from the federal level to the state level, we are winning this battle in state after state after state. And the fact that this law just passed is going to go into the court system just reminds us that if we want substantive change in the long term, we've got to get a change in the White House, and especially we've got to get a change in the Supreme Court.
That's true.